and welcome back to a new watercolour video. Today I'm painting this little cute cottage with lots and lots of flowers. I thought I'm personally fed up with the winter now and I'm looking forward to the spring and all the nice flowers and the summer. So I thought I would paint something a little more summery for a change. So if you want to follow along, you can download the outline as always on my Patreon and trace it onto your paper. Today I'm using some Winsor & Newton paints and Roman Szmal paints. I'm using Archie's watercolour paper, and I will list everything below that I'm using, and you can also get the link to download the outline as well. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I've put the line drawing onto the paper, I've traced it onto there, and I've just used my usual method of the graphite on the back, taped it down, and then I went over it with a sharp pencil point to get the imprint on the watercolour paper. And I made a few little alterations to the steps. I brought this step here slightly above this level just to make it look a little bit more realistic. We're going to have lots of flowers and foliage here as well, but I haven't drawn them in. I've drew a few little bits of greenery and flowers, but I've made it only light because I'm mainly going to draw those in with the paintbrush. And I haven't put a window here because I'm having lots of plants and flowers here, like in a kind of big chunk covering this side of the house, and I'm taking it quite high. So to have the window in the background and then these plants going over would just look too busy and complicated. So I'm going to start off with some masking fluid. I'm going to put masking fluid everywhere where I think I'm going to have flowers. So I'm going to put lots of little dots here and there as though there's flowers on these stalks. And I did just get a question on one of my other videos about masking fluid, and the person was just saying they can't understand why you can't just draw over the top of the paint. So it was in another video where I'd painted some pebbles, and it's because the watercolour's translucent, so you can't paint it over the top of other colours. The only way you could do that is if you used something more opaque like gouache, so it would just come out a completely different colour to what you were expecting, because the colour beneath will just shine through. So that's the whole purpose of masking fluid, to keep the paper white and then take the masking fluid off later on, and then you can put whatever colour you want on those little areas. So we just want this to look quite random because the flowers will be random among the green foliage. And then some of them big, like we're going to have some odd big flowers in there. Just all different sizes and shapes. It's not actually necessary to put any right over the edges because it's going to be white behind there. So I'll just put it where I think I'm going to have kind of foliage. Okay, so I'm going to leave that to completely dry. I've put some on the little window area where we're going to have a little flower box, and then we've got a little flower pot here on the side of the house. Maybe add some a little bit further up because I want to put those plants coming quite high up that side. Okay, I'll leave that to absolutely completely dry. It needs to be totally dry before we can paint over it. I'm going to mix up some of this Winsor lemon. So this is Winsor & Newton colour. And I'm also going to mix some of this nickel azo gold. This one's by Roman Szmal. I'm going to add some clear water to the house. I'm going to leave out the window, so we just want the main part of the house. I'm using a mop brush for this, and today I'm using that one that I got in the Maiden advent calendar, and it's a travel brush, so it's in this little travel handle, which is handy. So a light layer of water all over. I'll just go over that plant as well. I'm just leaving out the windows and the door. There's quite a lot of water on this. I'm going to lift some of it off because we just want a nice sheen on the paper. We don't want it to be absolutely saturated. So I'm absorbing up any puddles. And then I'm going to get a little bit of that Winsor lemon. Not much. Just dropping that in wet, spreading it about. Doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to drop some of that nickel azo gold in, especially around the edges. Don't want it to be really neat. I want to give some kind of unevenness. A little bit dark around the edges. And I'm not taking it right to the bottom. I'm going to add some green in there. I'm going to get some of this really dark, this one here, a really dark green, Perylene green. I'm going to just get that on the end of the brush. And I'm going to drop that in across the bottom here. Then I've dabbed the brush off so it's just damp, and I'm just going to kind of just blend that a little bit. I'm going to take it a little bit further out onto the edges. And I'm going to clean the brush, get most of the water out, and then just rub on that edge just to blend that out a little bit, the sides. I'm going to get a little bit of olive green. And while the paint's still wet, I'm just going to add a little bit of that to the edge and just let it blend into the house. And then also over the top of the Perylene green, just sort of dab it in there. Going to get another little bit of the nickel azo gold, quite neat, and some of this is still wet. I'm just going to add just some little bits here and there. The paper's still damp because I just kind of want an uneven look on that paintwork. Now this is something that I'm trying to improve because I can never get this to look right. I look at other people's paintings and it looks great, but I can never seem to do it. I think I'll leave it like that. Right, so we need to fully dry that. Now you can either leave it to dry naturally. I'm going to use a drying tool. For the roof, I'm going to use some Payne's grey. I'm just using a square end brush, which I believe is called a flat, because it'll be a bit easier to get in the corners, I think. So I'm just going to paint this section. I'm also going to put a really light layer over the windows and the window frame as well. And a much lighter layer over the doorway. Just add some water so that it'll spread nicely. Onto the base area, I'm going to wet the whole area except for the steps. And I am aware that the steps are not even. They'll come out more this side, less this side. But I'm just going to leave it. But the urge to make it symmetrical is there. But I'm just going to leave it. I need to stop doing that, because they do look better when they're a bit wonky and quirky, these houses. I'm going to use the same colours that I made the house in. I'm just going to do the top strip first. Just leave a little bit blank at the bottom. And we're going to put some green in like I did here. So I'm going to make it quite messy, not perfect. I'm also going to add a little bit of brown in there. I'm going to add some of this. This is Cypress Raw Umber Deep, but it's just any brown colour, really. Just add a little bit of that. I'm going to define the edges of those steps with that brown. I'm just using the corner of the brush. Now the Perylene green again, a really dark one. Right across the bottom, which is a little bit wonky. And again, I'm going to take that right out to the sides. And then just rub on the edge. Make it a little bit uneven. Try and make it kind of... I kind of want the same amount of white at each side of the page, so I'll take this one a little bit further just to even up the sides a little bit. Then I'll get some of that olive green again, which is a little bit warmer. Dab a little bit of that in above the dark green. So this is quite neat on the brush as well. If it's too watery, it'll just spread everywhere. So just a tip, I'm getting it right from the pan onto the brush. And then it's just blending nicely into that damp paper. I'm just going to dab it a little bit further up as well, because we want it to look like there's loads of plants and foliage there. And I'm painting this area and I'm making it slightly overlap so it'll create a little bit of a shadow. Can you see that little extra little line? So I'll just switch to a really small brush for this one. This is a 3/0 round by Princeton. I do get asked a lot about exactly what brush I'm using. This is why I keep saying what brushes I'm using. And I'm going to add some of the yellow colours in there as well. Just drop some bits in here and there. Just trying to make it look kind of dirty and grungy. Or maybe put a little bit of Payne's grey in there as well. Just in some areas. For the outside of the roof, I'm going to paint a really light layer of the Payne's grey. You see how it's created that second line there, which looks quite good. Because it's making this part of the roof look indented by creating that second line. Now I'm going to completely dry that off. I'm going to paint another layer of Payne's grey on here, but this is going to be like a light layer. I'm going to get some really strong Payne's grey right from the pan on the corner of the brush, and I'm going to darken in these areas, so underneath the chimney, in the corners, and across this area here. And then just let it kind of blend out a little bit.
Come on, soft, turn the key and cooler on. Push the pause for relief. Free pass, you don't even have to ask to be the cat in the sun. Someday I will see the whole deal through. Today I've got better things to do. Okay, to leave a little bit undone and be the cat in the sun.
Now I'm going to paint the window panes with a darker shade of Payne's grey, and I'm leaving a little area for the window frames.
Set aside every empty spreadsheet line and loosen up on the grind. Simmer down, settle back and mess around. Be the cat in the sun. Someday I will see the whole deal through. Today I've got better things.
I'm going to paint the windowsills and the little flower pot and the chimney next. So I'm starting off with the nickel azo gold. So I've just painted a layer of that, and then I'm going to get some really concentrated right out of the pan and stick that just down the bottom area and just kind of let it blend upwards on its own.
Okay, to leave a little bit undone. Be the cat in the sun. Be the cat in the sun.
And then for the chimney, I've got some of the brown, and I'm just going to make this a slightly different colour. I'm just going to add a little bit of brown into that. going to add another layer over the door area. I want it to be a little bit darker. And then also a layer of Payne's grey all over the steps. Just a light layer. So I've made up some of the Perylene green and the olive green, and I'm going to use these two brushes. I've got a really thin little liner brush, and that's a 10/0, and then I'm going to use just the little, and also the little 3/0 round brush. Again, Princeton, so that one's a Princeton 4050. Now I've got a few of these and I've had them for years. 4050 are Princeton, and you cannot get them in the UK anymore, unfortunately. You might be able to get them if you're in the USA, but I can't get them anymore. So the ones that I have got, I'm trying to, you know, really look after them carefully, because I really love them. And what I love about them is they're a round brush, but the end isn't too pointy. Sometimes a real long point can get in the way. It's great for getting in corners. Yeah, sometimes I just don't like them. And these ones, these 4050, they're not super pointy. Okay, so I'm going to paint some foliage now. So I'm going to use a liner brush to paint some long stalks. Just going to carefully try and make them look natural, how stalks would naturally kind of bend. And I'll use the round brush to add just smaller leaf-like foliage. I want this base area to be a little bit darker than the house, so I'm just going to add, before I add the foliage on there, I'm just going to add some more of that brown colour. I'm just going to put a light layer over there to make it look more like a brown kind of base on the house. I'm going to get some clean water and soften some of this because it's looking a little bit harsh. So I'll leave some of it and then soften, just rubbing the brush on it to soften it a little bit in some parts. I'm also going to add a little bit of the olive green across the bottom, just to put a ground there as though there's some grass. I don't want a harsh line there where the tape is, so I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to lighten some of these lines because they just look too dark, so I'm going to put a bit of clean water on there, just rub on the line a little bit and then lift it with the tissue. I'm going to move on to the window frames now, and I've got some white gouache here and it's quite weak. We don't want it too strong because we do want it to dry like a grey colour, so it's quite watery, and I'm just using the tiny little brush and I'm just going to paint in the window frames, but I want to leave a black edge. So I'm leaving, can you see that black edge, so that hopefully that'll make the window look indented. And then I'm going to paint in panels on the door, and I want these to be lighter. And I'm just putting a few little extra touches of white just in some areas. Now I'm going to use a sepia coloured fine liner because I don't want a harsh black line, but I'm going to add some line work now. So this is sepia, and it's a 0.1 and it's a uni pin. I'm not going to outline everything, I'm just going to put outlines in some areas and I'm going to make them quite sketchy. So I'll start with the chimney. I'm going to make some sketchy kind of brick-like shapes. I'm actually going to use a number 5 as well, which is a bit thicker. I'm going to go along here. I'm going to add some shading lines in there as well. Yeah, I think the number 5 is much better. In fact, it's not even really that wide, the number 5. So it's kind of a nice size. So we'll kind of make this look like a little bit like grungy wood. Add a little bit of layer of brown paint on the steps. I'm going to add a little bit of Payne's green kind of around the edges, just to make them look a little bit kind of messed up and old. Now I'm going to take off all the masking fluid. I'm using the rubber cement eraser to do that. Right, so now we've got our lovely white spaces where we can paint our colourful flowers on. So I'm just going to randomly place the colourful flowers, and I'm going to leave lots of little white ones as well. And I think I will leave it at that. I'll leave all the little white flowers. So I just want to explain this one thing about the masking fluid. So if you see where I left you can see here how bright these red flowers are. And I'm not sure if you can see, but right here underneath I painted the red on top of the green, and you can barely see it. So that's why you need the white underneath the paint so that it shows through, and then you can see the actual colour. Okay, so I think I will leave it at that. Get the tape off. There we go. So there is another cute little cottage, and you can download the outline on my Patreon as always. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give me a like, leave me a comment. All that really helps tell YouTube if you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, if enough people do it, they'll promote the video to more people. Okay, so thanks very much for watching, and I will hopefully have another video up very soon.